Welcome back to another Unfiltered Gamer Kickstarter game review. It's 2017, and for the first game we're doing this year, we're doing Battle for the Universe. It's a two-player competitive deck-building game based on superheroes. It lasts about 30 to 45 minutes, and it was created by John Hinkle. It's going to be on Kickstarter January 10th, and let's get into the review. For deck construction, you'll choose either hero or villain. After you've chosen if you want to be the good guys or the bad guys, you'll then choose which faction you want to play, which is your headquarters card. After your headquarters, you build a location for the rest of the city you would like to fight in, as well as your deck of heroes and or villains. You can include the heroes in the villain decks and the villains in the hero decks, and cards of different factions, but there's a penalty for playing them. This is the general board setup. You'll have your deck, your discard pile is next to your deck, your victory condition is next to your deck as well, on the other side. You'll have your starting location, which is your lair or your headquarters, if you're a hero or villain. You'll have your extra location cards for when locations in play have gotten cycled, and you'll have your basic locations. Both sides will have a basic location to start with, and that will change depending on how the game goes. During the game, the turn is broken down into 5 phases. The first phase is the refresh phase, where you unexhaust all of your cards. The second phase is your generate resources phase, where you generate resources via your base and what locations you have. The third phase of the turn is your recruit phase, where you play heroes from your hand. And the fourth phase is your action phase. After your action phase is the final phase, the end phase, where you clean up everything that you kind of done over the turn. The first phase of the turn is the refresh phase, which is kind of skipped on the first turn, but during it you unexhaust all of your characters. The second phase of the turn is generate resources, where you start by generating the number of clout equal to the large white numbers on territories you control. In this case we have 4 plus 3, which is 7 clout total. After that, you then either choose to generate a civilian or a money token. That is also based on modifiers in play on your locations. In this case, if we chose civilians, you would generate 2 civilians because we control the park. If you chose money, you would only generate 1 money. The next phase of the turn is the recruit phase, where you can use the resources you've generated on that turn. Clout is generated each turn, and civilians and money are kept over the turn. So if you generate 1, you'll keep it until next turn if you have not spent it. This large number in this corner is the clout cost. Next, you have the money cost, which in this case would be 0, indicated by the dash, and after that you have the civilian cost. On this card it would be 2. During the recruitment phase, if you would like to recruit a card of a different faction, it'll cost you an extra 2 civilians or money of your choice. If you would like to recruit a hero in a villain deck or a villain in a hero deck, that'll cost you an additional 3 clout as well. After you've recruited your hero, you'll place it into your base exhausted, which means it can't do anything on the turn it comes into play normally. However, if this was not its first turn, it would be able to participate in the action phase, which is the next phase. In that phase it can move, which also exhausts it. It can attempt to secure a location, which also exhausts it as well. Or, if it's on the same space as an enemy, it can attempt to fight that enemy. When you move your card, you can move into any adjacent territory, even if it's face down or face up. When you do, you become exhausted unless you have an ability that says otherwise. The abilities that do that are fairly common. After you move on to a location and you're unexhausted, you may attempt to secure it. When securing a location, you flip it face up. At this point you have 2 options. You can either pay its clout cost to gain it into your control, or you can attempt to destroy the location by fighting it with your fight value versus its defensive value. When you do this, you destroy it, you gain resources equal to the amount of civilians or money printed on the card, your choice, and you replace it with a new one from your location pile face down. The last action you can take in a turn is battle. To begin a battle, both characters have to be in the same location. You then play reinforcements from your hand, based on the cost in the lower left-hand corner of the card. You then compare the defensive and offensive values of all cards involved. If the defense is lower than the offensive value of a card, it is sent back to the base. The support cards are discarded at this time, and if the defensive value was less than half of the offensive value, you discard the main card as well. The victor then may attempt to secure the location and becomes exhausted. The last parts of the turn is the draw step. During the draw step, you draw a card. If you're below 4 cards, you draw up to 4 cards, and if you're above 8 cards, you discard down to 8 cards. After that, you pass priority to the inactive player. Those are the basic steps of the game. Play will continue with characters moving around the board, attempting to capture locations, or fighting the enemy faction, until one of the victory conditions are met. The victory conditions are the heroes defeating 7 characters, the villains capturing 35 civilians, or either player's base being destroyed. Another thing to note is the characters all have abilities of some sort. They're like flight, which allows you to move extra spaces and not become exhausted. Another ability is Mastermind, which will allow you to move other characters on your side of the board. One of the more interesting ones is Sidekick, where you basically become an equipment piece for a stronger hero. That's the basics of how to play Battle for the Universe. Let's see what I think about this game. Alright, let's get into my opinions on this game. I love the superhero theme. It's one of my favorite themes. The art on these cards, while we have a pre-Kickstarter version actually, doesn't quite have all of the art, but what art is there is quite spectacular and amazing. I do like the deck construction aspects as well. The fact that you have villain decks and hero decks and they're separate and they have different objectives in the game leads to a lot of in-depth strategy, as well as the fact that you're building your locations and not just your main deck of who you're fighting, but also where you're fighting. That is a new thing that I don't see very often in deck building games. The currency for this game is also an interesting thing because the villain deck that we have doesn't really have much in the way of money involved in it, so they can focus mostly on collecting civilians, which is also one of their win conditions. Whereas the hero deck has to split what it does, and you have to, but depending on what cards you draw, do more money or more civilians. Overall, this has been a great game, and I really enjoy playing it. Alright guys, this has been another Unfiltered Gamer review. Please like, subscribe, and comment, as well as checking out our website, unfilteredgamer.com. You should also check out our sponsors, Everything Board Games, and thegiveawaygeek.com. Alright, see you next time. Please check out our website, the
subscribe and comment.
Oh. Welcome back to another Unfiltered Gamer. Why does that give me so many problems? Hero or villain card. Based on that, no. Out is generated every turn and refreshes at the end of the. After you set up the game, you'll draw a hand I want to say up to, but it's not up to. You will draw a hand of 6 cards.